to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll take a roll call, starting with Doreen.
Doreen Whitberg. Brandy Pelletier.
Eunice Landry.
Eliza Drolet.
Tim Broderick.
Heidi Duper.
Howie Drolet.
Matt Jazokis.
All right, agenda review. I'll take a motion on the agenda.
Make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Anything to add?
I'm going to give an update on the building project.
Perfect. All right. Do you want to do that?
Under
Informational buildings and ground?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? No. All right. Take a vote. All in favor of the agenda as presented?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'll take a motion on the approval of minutes for October 15th.
Yep. Make a motion to approve the minutes drafted for meeting on October 15th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there a non-public or no?
No,
I don't think we have one.
consent.
All right, perfect. So I will now open public input for any agenda-related items. Seeing no public input, I'll close public input. And under BES administration, we've got a principal report from Howie.
Good evening, everyone. So our enrollment report is attached. We're at 415 students, which is down 6 from last month. So we had our a couple of annual events took place over the last couple of weeks. So we held our annual turkey trot, which we had to change a little bit due to construction. So we had to kind of modify the route a little bit, and but it was a great event. Each grade span had a race around the lower soccer field, and each winner from each grade had a turkey decorated cookie donated by Leah Whitney, and the kids from grades 5 through 8 also won an actual turkey. And I'd like to thank the PTO for donating all the snacks and water. We had our annual Halloween parade, and we paired that with a Cub Club activity in the morning. So our older kids got together with their younger kids. They did a Halloween craft in the morning, and then in the afternoon we did our Halloween parade with the older kids kind of cheering on the younger kids from the soccer field. And again, it's just another great event that we have here that builds community. Our 8th graders recently traveled to Boston, and they went to the Freedom Trail, Holocaust Museum, and Quincy Market. We came back with the same amount of kids. I'm not saying they were our kids, but we came back with the same amount, and that's all we really cared about. So,
That was good.
our fall sports update. All of our teams for the fall have done. Our sports awards banquet was held on the 12th, and basketball has just started. So that's getting up and going, and I can have some numbers for you in terms of how many athletes we got participating for the winter at the next meeting. So one of the goal that I have for the end of this year is to have a fully functioning multi-tiered systems of support in place. And the part that we're working on this year is sort of our tier 1, our universal team. We spent a lot of time last year working with our tier 2 team, which provides tier 2 supports to kids. I'm happy to say that team is really functioning well. And our social worker, Allie Bortz, chairs that team and does a great job with that. So Aaron Emery has recently had a meeting with our tier 2, our tier 1 team, and when we're looking at tier 1, we're looking at things that pertain trained to 100% of the kids across school-wide. So both instructional practices and classroom behavior strategies. So we're going to do some work with that tier, and then hopefully by the spring, and when we hit the ground rolling in September, we'll have a fully functioning MTSS system. Haley Wheeler and the Student Council did a food drive, which was amazing. We got the final numbers in today. I didn't get a chance to catch her, but as of when I wrote this midweek, last week, we had over 900 donations of wellness products and over 700 items of food, which have all been donated to the Barnstead Food Pantry. So I can get the final numbers, but it was great. I mean, kids were. In fact, I had to help a kindergarten who couldn't carry his bag in today. He was trying to carry his food items in. So again, that was a great event. So kudos to Haley and the Student Council for putting that on. Our parent-teacher conferences were really well attended. I'd like to thank our IT department they were here for the entirety, both night, and they were helping parents get set up on Infinite Campus. So I noticed a lot of people were tapping into them. So thank them for being here to get that going. Phil Ginter reported that our book fair was the most successful that we had, so that kind of ran concurrently with our parent-teacher conferences. And our counseling department has initiated a kindness initiative, and they've started what they're calling a Kindness Kings boys group. So they're meeting with a group of boys once a week in the morning, and they're going to be also starting kindness initiative where kids are going to take a kindness pledge, and we're going to have something up on the wall, not permanently but on paper, where kids kind of put their handprints on there and kind of take a kindness pledge. So that's coming down the road. So that's all I have. I know Dr. Broderick's going to talk about substitutes in his report, so I won't mention that there. But if there are any questions about substitutes when he gets done, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
I just have a quick question. I know, thank you for the sports update. Is there anything currently involved with band or anything outside of athletics going on for the kids that's available?
Yes, we have drama going on right now. Our fall clubs our afternoon clubs just wound down, and the winter ones are getting up and going yet. I'm not sure where we stand on those. I don't think we have any in place yet, but we're going to have winter clubs for kids. And I know Rowan Chandler has started her sectionals for kids. So she's got a group of kids that come in and work. The woodwinds work on one day and the brass work on another day. So, she's trying to, expand the band program as much as she can. And she's doing a really good job at trying to emulate Alton, with Alton having a half a person more than we do. So she's really trying to get creative in ways that she can get more kids involved, and we've worked with her on the schedule a little bit to make that happen. So our band program is, and I can get some numbers for the next report.
Yeah, no, I don't want to create more homework for you. It's just nice
No,
to hear
it's
about what
absolutely.
other extracurriculars do we have available, and if we
Yeah.
don't have them available, is there an opportunity where we can try to make things happen outside of the athletics that we offer, which is
Right.
always great to hear about
Yep.
too. So thank you for the
Yeah.
update.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? All right. We've got a buildings and ground update in our packet from Sean, and then Eunice is going to give us an update on the construction.
Yeah, we've had 2 meetings since our last board session, and our next one is tomorrow. So I'm going to cover construction in 2 basic areas. One is the obvious one, which is the construction of the gym. So a lot of work's going on there. We had discussion about the inside wall panels. There's potential savings there. We'll probably be making a decision tomorrow. So the rafters and roofing have been started, and also the steel work, which you might not notice, but adjacent to the gym on the backside, which will be connected to C-Wing, that's underway. Inside the building, they're working in the old lobby and kitchen area, in that whole area. So inside the old lobby, the bathrooms, they've cut the slab, they've sistered joists rafters that were damaged by a previous fire. Tiles for the bathrooms have been selected, and they expect completion in the bathrooms in January. Also inside is speech and reading. The framing and installation is underway. And in the kitchen area, the coolers, so temporary coolers have been installed, and they're working on pads and framings for the new area for the coolers. The equipment for the kitchen has been ordered, and the place that it was ordered from is going to store it until we need it. Any other issues or, minor issues come up as far as new business, but the big one is, well, for Sean Asdod, it's a big one, is the dry well that's out by the sign. There's been some flooding there, and he was concerned in the winter that that would create an ice problem, especially with the walkway along there. So they've been, Milestone and Associates have been looking at it and trying to figure out a solution, but it's also determined that the town's going to do work on Maple Street, so we're going to kind of wait and see what they're going to do to help fix the problem with drainage.
They're working on the whole road?
Yeah.
It looks like as soon as we're done, they're talking about it right now.
Oh, okay.
So it looks like as soon as we're done with construction of the school, they're thinking about redoing both the stormwater controls and maybe the paving itself on Maple Street.
So it'd be
it's a couple
nice
years away.
be nice to know what they're going to do, because
Right.
it
They're
could
gonna
help us or
widen
hurt
it and
us.
put a turning lane in.
I don't think that's
One
gonna
way.
happen.
Make it one way.
There's one other new development. It just happened this morning, so you'll hear about it, which is going to be tomorrow morning. There was a question, a difference between the approved state fire marshal plan, which are the plans we've been using since we started construction last June, and the town fire chief's thoughts on a standpipe. That is essentially a hydrant that the Barnstead Fire Department could hook up to if they needed water here. Our approved plan has enough water storage plus the sprinkler systems to run the sprinklers, and then tank trucks could come and hook up to continue to charge them, which was approved by the state fire marshal. There was some question about maybe adding up to 15,000 gallons of additional water storage capacity so that we would have more coverage here, and everyone got together this morning involved in that, and cooler heads prevailed, and our existing plans are still approved, and we do not have to add additional water
And
storage.
they know most of the buildings like made out of cinder blocks.
Well, that's good news, because we're going to have 5 cisterns, as I understand it, so we're going to have plenty of water.
Already. There will be more water than we've ever had stored here.
Okay, good. Anything else?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for the update.
It's definitely exciting seeing all the
It
work.
is.
And I think I mentioned it at one of the other meetings, but just the like tidiness of a construction site is pretty amazing. They're doing a really good job. with
They
that.
are really good. I've built a few things over the years, and these folks, they are on time, they are within budget, it's clean. We've really, so far, we have a year to go, but
They're very responsive. I mean, I noticed tonight that the barriers are gone out here because Sean was concerned about them when you have to plow the snow. So now there's ropes and poles, so it's going to be much easier for the winter months.
And
Very, very
anytime anything has ever popped up or I've needed anything, I mean, it's usually done that day. So again, their responsiveness is top notch.
Awesome. All right, moving on to SAU administration. We have our financial reports from Heidi. Any questions, or Heidi, anything to add?
We're looking okay. I know we have money, we have a lot of open positions in special ed, so you'll see quite a bit left in budget balance. I did encumber the bond, the principal portion, so you'll see a negative there. But overall, special ed transportation is over right now. Other than that, we're in good shape. If you have any questions.
So when the business administrator talks about a lot of openings in special ed, that's true on the balance sheet, but it's important for people who understand what we have to do for children in special ed to know that that is one teaching position and 7, I think, a lot of support staff positions. We are still desperately seeking support staff, paraprofessionals.
Any questions? Alright. We have a technology report in our packet from Matt. Any questions on that?
It might have been today that parents started receiving emails and text notifications about First View
Yes,
real-time bus tracking. There are instructions there. Some folks will have to call in for help. Finding what's my student ID can be a little bit of a navigation process in our student information system, so folks can call into the school during the day for help getting those things set up on their phones.
Perfect. Matt, looks like you're up.
Thank you very much. So in my board report this evening, I bring to your attention Barnstead continues to be designated as the ATSI. A couple years ago, we were CSI, but we had made growth in that piece of it, so we're continuing as a target assistance support and improvement piece. We continued to make progress. It's not where we want to be, obviously, but when you look at the growth from 2022 to 2024, as a whole school in achievement, and achievement is one of the high ones that they look at. That's our SAS scores and things of that nature. As a whole school, we would be meeting the level in terms of the number that is required. At the state level, it's 1.86. Right now, as a whole school, we're at 1.96. So as a whole school, we would not be designated. But they also then look at subgroups. And so in the subgroups category, you look at economically disadvantaged as well as special education. And you can see from 2022 to 2024, there is consistent growth in those areas as well. Again, the economically disadvantaged is getting closer to meeting that threshold as far as approaching proficient.
Is the 1.86, ideally you would see that in all 4 categories?
Correct, or
Okay.
higher, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the level
Yeah.
1 piece.
No,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
or higher.
So level 2 and beyond is what we're striving for.
Okay.
That would then take us off this idea of being the ATSI. Under growth, again, under ESSER, it's 39.83. And again, if you look at 2022, we were at 35.69 as a whole school, and we're now at 52.91. And again, if you look at economically disadvantaged and special education, you can see, again, growth over the last couple years. So again, we're trending in that right direction. So as far as growth is concerned, we do meet the criteria as far as the school is concerned on that. But again, because of achievement, we would stay under that designation. And then obviously, you can take a look at equity as well. The system-wide literacy committee continues to meet. We are working through this book called Speech to Print, and really the whole book is talking about the intricacies that go along with learning to teach how to students to read. There's a lot in it. Eliza can
Maybe an
attest to that.
understatement.
And so part of that is that, we're building up to developing what the criteria is that we want to look for in a new program, and taking these steps. When you look at our committee is a bunch of people who are go-getters who are like, all right, let's start piloting, let's start doing this. But we really can't do that without doing the first steps. Like, what are we looking for? What are the have-tos in the program that we want to select? And so our next meeting, which will happen in December, is we'll develop that list of haves that we want as a whole system, and then we will start taking a look at Ed Reports. Ed Reports is a nonprofit organization that really takes a look at all the different programs that are out there, and they're vetted by a variety of different people. So we'll take a look at those programs, and then we'll start to figure out which ones we want to start to pilot, and then we'll build our next steps or our calendar from there. So the group is working hard, and we'll continue to bring this back to you as we go along with that. So a couple different things that I want to bring to light. Thanks to Pam McDonald and the support from both from the administration here, our interventionists who are here this evening, as well as ACS. We've applied for a grant called Bridging the Gap in the 603, Pathways to Literacy Proficiency. They select 5 schools every year. This is the 3rd year, the cohort 3 that they're going through. And if we are selected as a school, there's a lot of training that comes with that piece of it. There's letters training, which is one of the leading programs for learning how to teach to read, that we would have access to. All of our teachers in K through 4 would be trained in that for those who haven't been trained. They provide literacy coaches, and also some funding around those pieces of it as well. When you think of sort of that big picture piece of it, our goal is in May to come to the boards with a program in terms of adopting for the future. Now, we understand that the budget process is already going to be on, so we're not going to be able to then turn around and buy a new program for the 26-27 school year. So we would be budgeting for the 27-28 year, utilizing next year as a way of really taking it and breaking down that program that we're going to use and providing the professional development so teachers feel comfortable. Having this letters training, if we get that grant, will tie nicely into that because, again, that would be sort of some of that professional development that our teachers would need in order to effectively implement the new program. So we should be hearing in the next few days. So hopefully we are selected for that. Alton Central School has also applied for that as well. So hopefully both of our schools would be able to participate in that. And lastly, before I let the interventionists take over, Mike Anderson continues to work. He was here the other day and doing some classroom modeling and having conversations, working with the staff after school, and we're going to continue to work with him throughout the school year. So one of the things that I have in the past brought to you is data. I'm breaking down some of the data, and so while I get the data and I can work with you on here, we have 4 individuals here this evening who are interventionists, who are diving into this data. They're becoming gurus, even though they don't know it yet, but they are. So not only with the STAR data, but this year we've adopted DIBBLES, which is, again, they can kind of talk a little bit about that piece of it. So I will be quiet, and I would like to introduce Tess Barbaro, Kira St. Laurent, Emily Gagne, and Brianna Duggan here to present. To present. I will go over here.
Oh gosh, I have to talk into the mic, don't I?
Yes.
Oh boy. Okay, well, hello. We're going to introduce ourselves in a moment, but first, if we want to flip to the next slide, just a quick overview of the agenda and some of the stuff we'll be seeing. So obviously, we're going to start with meeting our team. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the SAS data. Then we're going to go into STAR, what it is, and a little bit of the data there, as well as then DIBBLES, which is brand new this year. The USNS screener, that's our new math one, which we'll also go over. Then what win time is, looking forward, and a testing schedule. All right, so this is our team. I'm the first one up. I'm Kira St. Laurent, K through 4, reading interventionist through the Title I program.
I'm Emily Gagne. I am also a K through 4 reading interventionist through Title I.
Hi everyone, I'm Brianna Dugan. I'm K through 4 math intervention. I just started halfway through last month, so I'm really excited to hit the ground running.
And I'm Tess Barbaro. I'm the 5 through 8 literacy specialist. And I'm the one that's going to kick you off. If you just press the screen here, just hit the button. Yeah. So I'm going to start with SAS. So SAS, this is the long description that comes from the formal website. SAS is the summative assessment that 3 through 8 takes and third year of high school. The data that I'm going to show you next, Matt talked about overall proficiency, the whole school. We went through and we looked at each cohort of kids for ELA and math. So we're going to go through working top down. So it's by graduation year, but if it helps you, because that helps my brain, 8 down to 3. So. Okay, so looking at trends, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. But I just looked over at the trends. So this is the class of 2023 for ELA, going back 3 years. The numbers on there are rounded, just so it was easier for us to see. Blue is Barnstead, gray, is the state expectation, and that takes the scores from everybody and gives us the average compared to where we are. So you can see the class of 2023 for ELA has kind of gone up and down. That's a trend that you're going to see a little bit for a lot of the cohorts. We've had some inconsistencies in what's going on. So last year is Barnstead 2025. The good part about this is that you can see that we're following the trend with the state. So we're going up when the state goes up, down when the state goes down, things like that. And then if you look at the math one, this is where you're going to see our achievement is lower compared to where we are. So we started low, we went up 2 years ago, dropped back down last year. There has been a lot of work at our school about math curriculums and things like that. So building, we talk a lot about just because we've adopted a curriculum this year doesn't mean it's the next year gonna be fixed. So this is what we saw, but there are plans in place of going forward. And now once you switch from 2030, it's going to go to 2031. So these are our current 7th graders. This is where we're seeing a big drop. They were achieving great. There was positive progress above the state for the 2023 year. 2024, it's a percentage off. Last year, it dropped down. And if you go to the math, you'll see a same downward trend of that. So these are our current 7th graders. You can see going backwards, class of 2031, achieving, going above proficiency, and then we dropped down to 2025 last year was a 15% proficiency. That's the whole grade together, but that is the average of the kids that are proficient, meaning 15 take away from 100, that's who is either approaching proficient or below. Going to 2032. This one, as you can see, there is an upward trend. So they were going downward 2 years ago, still around about 50% of where the state was. Last year, they had a great jump for ELA, so those scores jumped up to about 48% compared to the state was about 56%. So there's an upward trend on that one. Math, there was a little bit more of a bouncing around, but again, from 2024 to 2025, we went back up. So the hope is you can see that it kind of follows the state trend, that there was a dip last year for overall these kids in the graduation of 2032. So there is a drop there as well. Then we're going to get down. These are kids that are in 5th grade and 4th grade. The reason there's only 2 is because they've only taken these tests for 2 years. So these kids haven't had 3 years back, so we couldn't look back at what they're doing. These scores are more consistent. So it's showing that the growth that the kids were making, what they have, they're holding on to. Still below the state average, but they're continuing to progress. There was a 1% difference between 2024 and 2025. Similar here, just in the opposite direction. They went from being 20% down to this one was 17%. The state, as you can see, also drops a small bit, so that's similar to what we were doing Again, this math piece, going through the SAS data, what we noticed was our reading scores are more consistent. Our math, there was a lot more up and down. There was a lot more inconsistencies in what groups of kids were able to do throughout their 2 to 3 to 4 times that they've taken this test. And then the last one, this is our current 4th grade, so the class of 2034, which always confuses me to keep them together. But they have, as you can see last year, the state average was pretty high for ELA. It was right around 48%. And the class of 2034 did about 25%, so halfway to meeting that goal. Similar to math, there was another drop down in our scores. These were our 4th graders. That there was a drop down. Sorry, I realized I've been sitting in red this whole time. There is a much less chance of there being proficiency. So again, these are the kids that are above proficiency and meeting it. That is not accounting for on the chart of a line that there are below proficiency or approaching. So when you look at these scores, we do have a number of kids that are also approaching proficiency, but to show you the achievement, which is what Matt talked a lot about, we wanted to ensure that we are seeing this compared to the state. That is our SAS piece, but then we're going to go into, so SAS is what 3rd grade through 8th grade takes. But now we're going to go into screeners that are more K to 8, and then some of them are lower grade. So we'll keep going. Does anyone have any SAS questions? I say it because it's easier for me to say, but is there any questions?
This is just evaluating
Yeah.
kids in reading and math,
So ELA and math, and there is a
3rd grade to 8th grade.
Yes, and then there
The
is a
bottom.
science piece that we did not include right now. That's in, correct me, 5th grade, and then in high school.
I think 8th grade.
Okay, so we did not include that one in here, but I can always send those to Howie or Matt something for next time to see them.
Does the board have any?
So that one they don't give. What was it?
So the questions are more for the board. There
Oh,
is
I'm
public,
sorry.
but
I thought I-
Sorry,
that's
that was
okay.
my fault.
She said, "Can I ask a
No, I know.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
What's your question? I'll ask it for you.
It was just, what did the science ones look like?
Last year we were 19% proficient in science.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have a question, but I feel like it's a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyways because this is not my wheelhouse.
Go
So
for it.
with the SAS testing, and my kids have been through this, I should know this, but do we ever break down the data further to look at like individual, like if a student is doing well in grasping material and homework grades and like in class it looks great, but then they just don't test well?
Yeah.
Is anything skewed to account for like those situations, or is it just these tests and we just look at how we perform versus the state?
Yeah. So these charts, yes, that's what I presented to you there. But the point of our team and a lot of the work that we do together is looking at, okay, these are numbers, but why is that happening? So what can we do and what's going on? So we've seen a lot of that. Like there are kids who aren't taking tests well. Do they not know how to facilitate or use the system itself? Because it's different than all the other tests that we give. Do they not know that you have to scroll down in the paragraph of reading to do it? And so as we get to the end, we do have a slide about looking forward, but our Dean of Students, Erin Emery, is going through and monthly we're going to do modules with all of the grades so that way they're more familiar with the system itself. And that way we can wean out, did they not know what it was or were they just not familiar, and take away some of that anxiety and unfamiliarity.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that is because my son at the time, when he was like 7th grade, 8th grade, right, he'd be like, Psh, I don't care about this,
Yeah.
right? Almost like this doesn't really go against my grades. So the attitude with approaching when you had SAS testing was, I don't really have to give a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Now, we spoke to that at like a home level, but like, how do you mask that like as a population? So I was just curious.
Yeah.
So thank you for breaking it down.
These folks work in the schools under Matt's supervision, but also with the principals and all of the teachers to triangulate this kind of data. So we have how are kids doing in classes on their report cards, how do they do on SAS, how do their STAR results look, which you're about to see. Matt and I go to Concord, and we work with the Department of Education on things like, what are you testing? Are these tests aligned to state standards? Then back here, is our instruction aligned to state standards? Or have we decided, oh, this teacher really likes butterflies, so we're going to teach butterflies, but then the test is going to be on something else? Like, so we try to bridge that gap. I have a quick example though, Brandy, that I think goes to right what you were asking about. The 11th grade science test for New Hampshire through last spring has been testing life sciences or biology, physical sciences, and topics in earth and space science. The New Hampshire State Board of Education high school graduation requirements require that every high school graduate take biology and life science and physical science, not the earth and space stuff. So a third of the content of the state proficiency test for 11th graders was on topics students weren't required to take. They're changing that. That's what we do on our end of it. So that in the future, New Hampshire's performance across the state on these science assessments is the worst of the three subjects. I predict pretty reasonably that in a couple of years, you're going to start to see a significant improvement in 11th grade science scores when we're no longer testing the kids on classes they haven't taken.
Thank you.
So that's kind of what my question's about. I know we're working on literacy, and I do feel like with ELA, like that's more of something that you just continually build your skills versus math. Like if I'm taught how to, add and subtract fractions, but next month I'm going to learn how to divide and multiply fractions, and I take the test before next month, I'm going to get all those wrong, right? Because I haven't, to your point, the curriculum. So in math in particular, like, are we already doing some of that work to identify, like, where is the gap? Because my sense is it's probably whole, like, content. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah.
I can do it. So again, towards the end, we were going maybe.
Test is a little.
I do like to chat.
Yeah.
So again, maybe I should have held my. Do we have questions to the end because we have a
No,
whole
that's
slide
okay.
about it? But
We'll
what
stop
we've been
after this.
doing. No, it's fine. We've been implementing WIN. So what I need. So there's a 25-minute 25 to 30 minutes depending on what grade you're in. And we went through as an intervention team, us and Alton, and we looked at what do kids need. So if you took a test and you couldn't add fractions, STAR tells us that. So then we made groups of kids who need to work on fractions. So 25 minutes of their day is committed to that piece with like peers around it who need to do that. Same thing for reading, and we went through, so that's happening K to 8 currently. 25 minutes, and then it's on a 6-week rotation. So if you're struggling in both reading and math, you will get reading, and then you also get some math help coming on.
Perfect. All right, we'll let you continue. We'll try to hold questions.
It was my fault. I said questions, so yeah.
All right, so next we're going to be talking about STAR, which is one of the other tests that we use that is K through 8. It's a computer adaptive test, meaning every question that the student answers, it'll adapt the next question compared to like how they answered the last question. We use it to monitor student growth for reading and math. It's one of the tests that we use. It's taken 3 times a year, so fall, winter, spring, and it shows progress towards meeting state standards and benchmarks, district benchmarks. Early literacy is taken in kindergarten and 1st grade for fall and winter, and then reading is taken for 1st grade in the spring, and then 2nd through 8th grade. And then math is 1st grade in the spring, and then 2nd through 8th grade as well.
And just to tag in, the STAR Early Literacy does include some math components at the end of it that do get assessed during kindergarten and math. So we're getting math data for
Like
them as well.
recognizing numbers and
yes.
stuff like that.
Exactly.
Patterns, things like that.
All right, so this is our early literacy data from last fall and this fall. As you can see, it's pretty similar. So these would be our kindergartners and 1st graders, I believe. Yes. So 33 students last year were at or above benchmark. And then 10 are on watch, which means approaching, as in like SAS terms. 15 need intervention, and then 15 urgent intervention. And then this year, 32 were at or above, 12 were approaching, and 15 intervention, 12 urgent intervention. So the numbers are pretty similar, and this is based on district benchmarks, not state benchmarks. Just wanted to note that.
Good.
Yes.
All right, so STAR reading data. So this goes into more, and this is the collective, because at the time that we took this is our current year, obviously, so this is for 2nd through 8th grade. So this is a little bit different because the past one was comparing to the district because they didn't have a way to compare it to state. Whereas state, they compare it to, they're predicting how the students are going to perform on the SAS test. So STAR has the ability to be able to do that, which is awesome for us. So the green and the blue on both for the fall, well, this was last year for reading, then this current year. So this is showing the predictors of where they think our students would perform on SAS. So back in last year, they had about 146 kind of potentially getting in that level 2, level 3 zone for SAS, whereas the bottom numbers down at the bottom, the yellow and the red, were for the ones who might be in the level 1 or the lower level 2 range. So that's kind of how that breakdown would end up being. And then this is our fall 25-26 predictors. So again, you can see that we have some slightly different numbers. So it seems like we're moving pretty consistent with some of the bands. So slight shifts, but mostly consistent. All right, I'll move on to the math section.
So I'm gonna start. For some reason, start by saying, for some reason, this made the order different. So it goes blue, red, yellow, green. It does. I don't know why it didn't. I will be honest, I didn't notice till today when I was looking at it, and I didn't think I'd change it. So I'll just explain it to you like that. So the blue here is proficient, and the green. So blue and green are proficient together. So if you put the top and the bottom stacked on each other, those are our ones proficient. Our red and our yellow, just like from before, are ones that are below and approaching. So when you add together the red and the yellow from last year, we had about 65% of kids that were below and about 35% of kids that were meeting or exceeding. This year, when we looked at it on the fall, this year we had about 45% of kids, which is still great, that we have this consistency, but you'll see that, again, it formatted it weird. So you have to flip it over and put them together, but we are still having about 40 to 45% of kids below proficient in our STAR scores. That does, in a good way, align with what we're seeing on our or on our SAS math. So we're seeing consistency, but we need to figure out how to make that consistency have an upward trend instead of what we're seeing.
All right, so this is the end of our STAR stuff. So I guess we can take questions really quick about STAR specifically before we shift into the next one, or this one. All right. I was like, I wondered if I clicked that earlier if it would pop up. So it's about a fun formatting thing. All right, so this is DIBBLES. Now DIBBLES is new this year, and we're using the 8th edition of it. And DIBBLES basically stands for the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. I have actually used DIBBLES when I worked at a different school a while ago. I love DIBBLES. It's great because it really targets those specific early literacy skills and gives us a much better idea of where those students are performing for fluency purposes and how they're applying that to their reading. So basically, they're measures that help teachers and schools determine how students are performing on the important reading skills. It'll assess phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, and comprehension. And then these are all timed assessments. Most of the measures are 1 minute. The maze, which is what assesses the comprehension component, is a 3-minute assessment, and the students do that completely on their own, and it's a silent activity. So they read independently, they're circling what word they think would fill in the blank. So for any academics, it's a closed reading, but it's a fill in the blank with word choices provided for them, and they have to figure it out in context. So that's the comprehension component. So this is our DIBELS data for the kindergarten through 4th grade. So our kindergarten class is the one on the far end, then 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And we did this by below, approaching, and then the green is the meeting and above. We just decided to combine them together because that's where they should be. So what's interesting about this is you can see how when they enter kindergarten, we're working on those skills. Those are things they don't all have. This is like letter naming fluency, figuring out how to tap out and find the sounds and words and decode, figure out how to read them, all of that. So we'll start to hopefully see a shift throughout the year because this will be done 3 times during the year as well. The fall, we'll do this again in January, and then we'll do this again in May, June. So we'll see the shift. 1st grade, you can see how that the numbers are starting to drop, and you'll see that increase in meeting and above. You'll start to see it increase again in that 2nd grade. Little dip in the 3rd grade area, but still they're pretty consistent. And then 4th grade, we see a nice shift. So what's nice about DIBELS is, like I said, it gives us that specific targeted information about those early literacy skills and if the kids are using them as they're reading. And
So Kira talked about kindergarten to 4th grade. I'm taking on 5 through 8. So these are their DIBELS scores. These ones, as you can see, we have a lot of green. We have more kids that are meeting or above and approaching than we do for below. This test, like Kira was saying, is on either paper and it's in a one-on-one setting with one of us as being the people that are administering it. It's not given for the teachers, so it's the same person that's scoring and interpreting for those reasons. And it really goes in and shows people what that they can do. So the 5th grade through 8th grade does a oral reading fluency for 1 minute. How many words can you get correct and how far can you get in 1 minute? And then the maze, like you were saying, works on that comprehension piece. When I was doing it with kids, there were a lot of kids that were reading a lot of words and could read really sound very well. And then the comprehension piece, they weren't understanding what they were learning. So there's a lot of information coming from a 4-minute test.
Which is pretty consistent where our kids can read, but it's the comprehension of what they're reading, right? So oftentimes you'll hear they read beautifully, but they don't know what they're reading. So that's really a focus of our attention this year in our 5 through 8.
any questions for DIBELS?
More of a comment, but on the previous slide, it really points to how important like preschool is, because that's where you're going to see those numbers in kindergarten flex.
All right, this goes into what I've been starting to do as I begin my new role. This is the universal screener for number sense. This was taken from Alton Central School. I worked with their math interventionist, and she's using those tests for kindergarten through 2nd 3 times a year, just like DIBELS. And so when I came in, this was one of the first things that I did was screen our K through 2 students in math concepts, very similarly to DIBEL versus like this and DIBEL versus the testing. I'm administering it one-on-one with students. I'm note-taking about what I'm seeing. They're about 3 to 4 minutes per student, and what we're testing aligns to the standards in their math curriculum. And it gives you a lot of information because, okay, maybe one student got everything right, knew everything. Maybe one student was able to get everything right, but I noted maybe I needed to read the question again. Maybe it took them a second to understand what I was asking them versus, so that's something to notice beyond the data as well. But similarly to DIBELS, I was the same person K through 2 administering this so that they would be more, what's the word?
Consistency.
Consistent, thank you, more consistent
Consistent.
across the data. So today I have, if you want to go to the next slide, today I have the data from K through 2, and similarly, it's in these 4 sections: at or above grade level, on watch, intervention, and urgent intervention. I have no comparative data until we do them again in January and in the spring. But if you take a look at 2038 or kindergarten, we have most students at or above grade level and on watch, and a few in intervention, none in urgent intervention as of now. For kindergarten, it was a very simple, maybe 2 to 3 minute test. Can you ID these numbers? Can you count to 10? Things like that. First grade, you see this is when we're starting to get that urgent intervention emerge. With that first and second grade, things are picking up, things are getting a little bit harder. We're going more in depth in math concepts. So that's when we're beginning to see these first and second graders enter that urgent intervention phase. I used a lot of this data in what I learned taking or administering these tests in the formation of groups for kindergarten through second grade, small group instruction, which is what I spend most of my day doing. And for kindergarten, we've just begun doing push in into class. I foresee that some of these students might enter into that urgent intervention phase, but as of right now, our kindergarten is looking strong without that urgent intervention. Any questions on these, on the USNS? I am really excited that we are making it the same as ACS, so when we have both, it'll be consistent across both schools. So thank you to Jill Moulton over there.
Do you want to start, or do you want me to
Sure.
go first?
So this is sort of what we talked about, right? So we shared all the data with you, but now what are we going to do with it, and what are we going to do to help what's going on? So we talked a little bit about this win time. What I need, right? Win, and this is right from our handbook, is a designated period in the school schedule to provide personalized support, enrichment, and remediation based on individual student needs. So we have groups of kids who are working on those skills that are hindering them from being successful when we take these tests or in the classroom. But we also have students who are achieving, are meeting these goals. So they're also getting an enrichment piece. So those students aren't just being identified as, oh, well, you've got it, that's great, we only can look down. So we're looking at what every single child needs, K through 8, and what we can do to help them and where we can move through that. So 5th through 8th grade is doing a 6-week cycle. We're in the middle of cycle 1 right now, looking at, there is 3 reading, there's 3 math, and looking at progress monitoring coming in December to see, are we helping with those skills? Are kids making progress? Who can go to this next skill? Who's going to be in this skill? So that is a conversation that I look at all the data, I bring it to the teachers, bring it to all the team special ed, administration. We sit down at the table and we really talk through, okay, this is what the scores are seeing. What are you guys seeing? What can we put together to make kids the most successful that they can? And then Kira will give you a little bit about what it looks like
what's
lower.
going on with K through 4. So we've been doing a little bit of a similar structure. However, ours isn't the 6-week. We kind of started trying to do like a 3-week for reading, then 3-week for math. Because when you have those classes and they're not switching like they are in the middle school, it can get a little bit different. And we've also been working with the classroom teachers because the model of sometimes switching classrooms doesn't always work with our very younger students. It takes them about 15 minutes just to switch to the next room, and then they lose that instruction time. So we've really been collaborating with the teachers to piece together that information and show them what is going on in their class and their grade and work on those specific skills. So we're wrapping up the first 3-week hit with the reading focus right before Thanksgiving, and when we come back, we're going to start shifting into a math through the rest of December. So that way we get an idea about how these blocks are really working. Obviously, it's still going to be a work in progress because we're seeing how those dynamics are working. So some classrooms we've kind of split where there's like an enrichment room where there's lots of different, like maybe some center-based activities, and the students are getting that boost. Then there's ones that are currently working at the skills or a little bit under, and then there's other ones that are going back to some of those foundational reading skills. So we've really tried to group students and give some suggestions about what those skills are that were in common, that they had in common, that they needed work on, specifically from the STAR reading report, because that gave us a lot of information about focus skills. so that way we could really pinpoint where that was, and then start to see that progression and how that's going to build throughout. It's like, any questions about win time?
Not a question, just a comment. I know I mentioned before my middle schooler, I thought it was just a time dedicated for homework. I didn't realize the true intent.
Yeah.
I know it's in our handbook, but hearing the dialogue of what you're spending your time doing, I think it's a great approach.
Well,
I
it is
think
more structured this
it's
year,
more
Yes.
right?
okay.
Yeah, so it has changed some.
Give
I was
myself a
gonna
little bit
say,
of
yeah.
credit, but well, good for the changes then, because I think it's really important to practice a little bit more what you're currently struggling on, or if you're doing great, what can we push you into further, right? So thank you for the extra explanation.
And so, is this you?
I think it was like both of us. We
Okay.
could just go
Oh,
together.
right, we're still moving. All right, so I'll start, then you can jump in, brother. So looking forward, right, this is our plan right now. We're constantly evaluating what we're doing with this win time. It's still, like we're talking about building, what's the best approach that we can do? I send Matt probably more emails than he'd like to receive from me about like, well, what about this? What about this? What about that? So how do we make sure that what we're doing is helping kids? Because it is much more structured this year. So how do we make sure the 25 minutes that we have is the most effective that we can? So we're making sure that we're serving all of our kids, K through 8, progress monitoring to really ensure that we're looking at data not just these 3 times a year, but after these 6-week cycles, in the middle at 3 weeks when we're doing it. What are we seeing in what we're doing making a difference, instead of just doing things to do them and hoping when they get to 3rd grade on a SAS that it happens.
I was gonna say, yeah, and a huge part of that is that collaboration and support for teachers with the instructional planning and the cross-curricular goals. I know in the past, our reading room has not been utilized to the full extent that it should be, and we're trying to get the teachers to come in more to access the materials and the supports that we do have in there. We've started different documents that provide online supports as well, that give different examples of how to incorporate like morphology into lessons, so the kids can actually learn how to break down more complex words and work on like the root, like the affixes and everything. So there's a lot of different things that go on with that, and collaborating with teachers to obviously make sure that we're making this work for them as well. We don't want to like push down only this is the one model that's going to work. Let's try it and then make the adjustments and make sure that we're really getting the support that we need for those students and how this is working. And the full system-wide alignment, so that way everybody is, going, and we're doing similar things as what ACS is doing as well. So we constantly meet as a team there to be able to provide those supports and bounce ideas off of each other and see what's working over there as well.
Yeah, and just as a comment to that, I would say for years that has been kind of a priority for our board, because we do have a joint board at the high school, and what we used to hear when students would get to the high school is, we can tell like that this group is from this town and this group's from that town on different topics and subjects. So we want to make sure that when they're getting there, they're at that same point as much as possible.
This is also not, I think this is really important to talk about. This is not, these are the things that were being done in Alton and we're bringing them to Barnstead Elementary School. This is more structure and new assessments with a team of interventionists who are all nodding right now at both elementary schools. Really important. There was simply a lack of structure in these interventions. You who have sat on the board for a while used to see essentially two reports a year. You would see New Hampshire SAS scores, whatever those meant, and you would see these things called benchmarks of reading, right? Those were Fontes and Pinnell reading benchmarks. Research has shown that when trying to distinguish between a struggling reader and a proficient reader, flipping a coin is as accurate as the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment. That is an unfortunate fact, and for 10 or 20 years, most of the field of education thought this was a wonderful way to figure out which kids were reading well and which ones were not. Wasn't working, didn't work. If there are weaknesses in any of these tools, and there can be, right? If it turns out in 5 years, in 10 years, with the benefit of hindsight, we think differently about dibbles or about star or about any of this. Because we're using multiple measures, we don't run the risk of falling into a trap where we rely too much on one thing, right? So these folks get to say, okay, so these kids all seem to be doing about the same on these assessments, but not this one. Maybe it's the assessment, right? Maybe it's not the kids. So being able to triangulate data and bring in all of these various measures is a lot of work, but it is what needs to be done. I'm almost finished, but I think, again, really important here, we are sitting in Barnstead, New Hampshire. Our per capita income is 170th out of 238 communities in New Hampshire. The strongest correlation in the United States with student achievement in public schools is zip code. So what we're trying to do here is beat the odds. That's our job. Is when we see students who are, if you had all of the districts in the state and you see where 50% is, and oh my gosh, we're down here. Based on the kinds of things that indicate student achievement, zip code, income, mother's highest level of education, it used to be, was the very strongest indicator of what a kid was likely to achieve in school. We don't have those things working for us to the same degree. For some of our kids, of course, we do, but not to the same degree that the communities that are in the top 25 or the top 50 or even the top 100 in the state in these other measures of income, measures of affluence have. So what we need to do is dig into this data and find ways to help kids grow more than kids in other schools in the state. And finally, last, I promise, in Matt's report, the most powerful number, the most important number to me that he talked about is growth. I've been in a school that had a lot of work to do on test scores and did it and succeeded. It can be done. Growth is the key. To me, the best news that we have this year is that the whole school growth rate, which 2 years ago was 35.69, is 52.91 last year. Here's what that means. 3 years ago, kids in 2/3 of the schools in the state were progressing or growing at a faster rate than the kids in this school. Last year, we were just into the top half in the state. Watch that number in the coming years. If our growth rate compared to other schools continues to climb, all of these other numbers are going to follow. I said I would be done, I promise.
So I'll just finish. I know there was a lot this evening, but I also thought it was important for the board to see the amount of work that these guys have done in a short period of time. But not only this group of people, our faculty who is receptive to sitting down and having these conversations around what is the data telling us and what supports that they can help with them in implementing some of this WIN stuff. So there's a lot of things moving, and again, it takes time to build this data and really scrutinize it. And these guys have done a phenomenal job. What I kind of keep telling them is that we're building the foundation because, as you can tell, there's a lot of go-getters here, and they want the house to be built already. But we've got to take those steps in order to make sure that we're successful and we can continue to maintain this. So, thanks, guys.
Anybody
Thank you.
have any?
Thank you so much.
And that was just really quick, that was the testing schedule that we touched upon it throughout by kind of mentioning that these would be done during different times. So obviously in winter, we have those 3, and then of course in spring, we add SAS with the other 3 as well. And then our final, thank you.
That's awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Being
you.
here.
Thanks, guys. Have a good
Have
night.
a good night.
Thank you.
I think you're up, Tim.
Maybe I'll ask if there are questions on my report. I think a couple of things that I should sort of read into the record for you. I don't need to read the report on special ed to you. Again, 3 of you at least have been on the board long enough that I think it's all a summary of what's happened over the last few years. but we've done a lot of really important things. We have, things that, again, more structure. We were just talking about it, right? I came to this school and asked to see things like teacher schedules and service logs, and found that, I'm not going to say they didn't exist, but it was extremely variable. And it depended a lot on who I asked and when I asked, and whether or not they happened to be ready. Today, if the director of special education needs to confirm that a child has been receiving the services in his or her IEP, she has real-time access to electronic service logs that we require all of the teachers to fill out. They've been trained, it's done. This brings with it some adjustment anxiety. People who have not been told you need to do this and we expect you to follow through every day, who all of a sudden are told we expect you to do this and you have to follow through every day, don't always love it at first, and that's okay. But it's what we need. We're a public institution. We operate under state and federal law and regulation. So you already know from last night that Pam is retiring at the end of the year. I'm grateful for the work she's done here. On transportation, you haven't heard about late or missing routes for a month or so, and that's because it's just not an issue, which is sort of what I predicted, even though it was very uncomfortable and difficult at the time. The issue that we continue to hear about and Howie's dealing with is a lot of behavioral referrals and a lot of conduct issues. So as of Tuesday, I've instructed for a student to provide 2 afternoon monitors. Afternoons are the issue, mornings don't seem to be. So as soon as they can get people here for that, they'll do it. We don't have to find them ourselves. We'll have a couple of bus monitors. Howie will have the flexibility to move them around to different routes or have them concentrate on certain bus routes that might be having more issues. Hopefully this is a temporary thing. But if it's not, then we'll have to build it into our budgeting for the future. I see a question.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
And in the event students unable to provide those monitors for the buses, are we in a position that we can
They tell
provide
me
them
they can do
through
it.
the school?
So the nice thing about contracting it is they're a huge company. We've talked about this, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're a Fortune 500 company, but they are the biggest provider of school transportation in the United States, which means they have safety programs, they have training programs, they have employee management programs. They have the capacity to provide people.
Okay. I think it's really important, right? And I think any parent, even
It
to
is.
support the driver, the other students,
Yep.
your own student, like it's just, if it's an ongoing issue with behaviors on the bus, like I don't want to wait for that to be,
Howie and Matt and
having
I
an
have
extra
all-
grown-up on the
Yeah,
bus.
we've
will
all
do
taken some
wonders.
opportunities to review some of the footage, some of the surveillance footage from some of the buses, and it's not hard to figure out where our drivers have to focus on keeping the buses on the road and getting the kids home
Hey,
safe.
I don't even like
They
my
can't
my
be
2
doing-
kids arguing in the back, right? Like I can't imagine. So again, to offer that support for the driver, big
And hopefully
responsibility.
it's a short-term thing. It's a matter of establishing norms and getting
Yeah.
kids used to expectations and that kind of thing. That we do see that in classrooms. Some of our most skilled teachers take the first few weeks of the year and don't cover a lot of content, but focus on community building and classroom expectations and that sort of thing, which then allows them to cover all kinds of content for the rest of the year because they did that up front. So we just have to wait and see how it goes. But I
Okay.
wanted you to know that I've already told them we need a couple of people, and
Perfect.
they're going to get them for us.
Thank you.
There are 3 on-call substitutes on Barnstead Elementary's on-call substitute list. I can tell you from experience that if there are not 10 names on the principal's on-call substitute list, you will not have enough substitutes to operate the building. So again, Howie and Matt and I met and discussed strategies, and I've been through it before with some other principals and other schools. We've started to make direct phone calls to people we know, and I'm talking about it here because we may not know enough people, but you all know more people, and asking this. Rather than bring somebody into the school who's not a professional educator, and then because we're so desperate for subs, burning them out by asking them to be here every day, we're asking people to pick a day of the week. Can you be a regular sub on Mondays? Can you be a regular sub on Wednesdays? Whatever that day is. Because Howie's going to be able to use that person probably every Monday, every Wednesday, whatever that day is. It is a universal truth, not only in public schools. This isn't because our employees are any different from any others. This is true in every business. Mondays and Fridays are those are the days with highest absenteeism in every kind of business. So our first effort has been, and we've already succeeded. I think we've covered a couple of days already. But if we could find 6 people to commit to a day a week, we would be appreciative, grateful. We'd buy them dinner.
At least school lunch.
Yes, lunch can be included. That can be part of the deal. So that's an important thing, right? That's been top of mind that we've been working on. The final thing that I have in my report tonight, and this is just the first time I'm going to talk about it. You'll hear more before we do anything. I sent you in my report to a website, daylightcomputer.com. And if that's all I tell you tonight, that's probably enough. Daylight Computer is a startup that's probably trying to do one of the craziest things in the world of computers. They're trying to compete with hardware products. They're trying to compete against Dell and Lenovo and big Microsoft, the companies that build computers. But they're doing it because they've invented a screen that does not flicker and does not use the light spectrum that these screens use. And the flickering and the spectrum of light have 2 problems. First, they're creating eye strain, which when you're I'm experiencing natural eye strain, which I'm supposed to be doing because of my age. It probably hasn't helped that over the last 20 years of our lives, we've all been looking at computers a lot of the time with these flickering screens. Our children now, though, are experiencing eye strain like those of us in our 50s and 60s when they're 10. So there does appear to be, and research has been done on this, a very strong correlation between exposure to screens and eye strain problems, vision problems. Furthermore, we've talked a lot the last couple of years. We did work with Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, about the content that kids are having access to on their smartphones and other devices, and how that's creating social and emotional mental health problems among our youth. It's inarguable. That's a fact. That's been happening for the last 20 plus years. But the screens themselves, because of the way they flicker, trigger dopamine releases. So the screen, the theory here, and again, it's backed up. We had I was at a conference last spring where there was a researcher from Princeton there talking about this. She's done firsthand research with her graduate students that supports this. That the screens themselves, regardless of the content that's on them, are part of this almost addictive relationship that we are inadvertently training kids to have with technology. Daylight Computer has developed a non-flickering yellow light screen. Among other things, you can walk out in full sun. Have you ever tried to take your computer out in the sun? You can take one of these devices out in the sun and use it. They're looking for 10 public schools in the United States to do pilots with. They want to put 20 devices in a classroom at a lower grade level and leave them in there for 3 months or something like that, and just not have we don't want kids spending more time on devices than they would otherwise. We just want to substitute these devices for the ones they would be using otherwise, and then let their folks in to take observational data. We would get parent permission. We would have releases signed. We would make sure the community knows that we're doing this if we choose to go forward. But we are one of the sites that they look very serious about trying to use to do this. I'm enthusiastic about it. I would like to be a part of it if we can. So I wanted to bring it to your attention. So if you want to do some research, take a look at their website, any of that, we would have one of the principals of the company come talk to you at some point in the next couple of months. We're not thinking about doing anything until after March. So I just wanted to introduce that and start talking about it a little bit.
Anything else? Nope. All right. We have a personnel report.
We don't have any action though?
No action. I just have a question. Are we still having cheer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I know last
it was like an Alton Barnstead combined thing. I just didn't see it on here, so I
I
wasn't
think it is
sure.
exactly the same as last year, the way
Okay.
it's running, but that's, I can check. Let me send it.
And now we have our final public input.
Did you say public input?
Yeah.
No, go ahead. I didn't hear her.
Diana Black, Barnstead. So, most of you are aware of the situation on the bus with my daughter. I brought it up last meeting. I was very frustrated last meeting, as I think most parents would be. I will say this is the last time I'm going to bring it up, because I feel like it's falling on dead ears, quite frankly. Miraculously, after the meeting, I got the final report that I was told that it'd take time by at least 3 board members. Not impressed, quite frankly. And 23 minutes after the board meeting, the investigation was complete. The results sounded like they were done based on talking to the principal and the driver, not really looking at the video. You did mention the monitoring. Maybe that'll help. I am concerned about the judgment regarding the bus company that you recommended, since the accountability, the video's not there, the audio's not there. Also, implying a 9-year-old should be sent to a counselor because they can't handle a bus. It's first year she can't handle a bus. Funny she could handle it as a kindergartner. I think it's honestly the adult's responsibility to handle the situation. I was told that it was an experienced driver, but the experienced driver couldn't handle 3 second graders, because I did my own investigation, forcing a kindergartner to drink glue. I can tell you the 3 second graders weren't the ones that got yelled at either. So I think in regards to that, I think the adults in the situation probably should reprimand the correct kids. And I also think that the adults in the situation owe the rest of the bus an apology. Because all you guys created in that situation was older kids that now will not speak to administration at the school. So if there was an incident, because there always is, behaviors are out of control. You guys have mentioned them numerous times. They're not going to speak up. I can tell you that right now. So I think it's a failure on this school's part, and I think the school can actually do better. I also think that the board is the one that makes the decisions whether we share services or not. I would ask the board to look into the numbers since you guys decided to share services and see how much better they are or worse. Because honestly, you guys are failing our students. Thank you.
Kim Pika, Barnstead. I am here tonight to address the safety concerns I have for both students and staff in this building. First, I want to acknowledge the efforts around the school rebuild. I will admit I don't always follow the details of tax increases or the politics involved, but I supported a new school for our town because I understood the issues we would start to face with the old building. I want to sincerely thank everyone whose efforts made this project a reality. However, while this building is beautiful on the outside, we need to address the crisis happening inside the building. In the final months of my employment here, I recall hearing that one of the goals of district leadership was to reduce the number of paraeducator positions because it was believed that there were too many in the building. At the time, I assumed that this was just a rumor. However, someone recently mentioned the number of paraeducators currently in the building, which is approximately 16, compared to the roughly 28 during my last year here. That staffing level met IEP requirements, supported student behaviors, and covered lunch and recess duties. How does this school function properly with nearly half the support staff we once had, especially when many of the remaining paras are one-to-one aides who cannot step away from their assigned students? What happens when flu season hits this year and you have 10 to 20 staff members out sick, substitutes remain limited, and only 16 paras are available to cover the entire building? During my 6 years at BES, I worked under 2 different special education directors, both physically in the building every day and ready to step in when situations escalated. The year I left was the year the director's role became a district-wide position. Now one person oversees all 3 schools. How are we meeting the special education needs of the students when the director is only here 2 days a week, case managers are stretched thin, and we have only a fraction of the paras we used to have. Classroom disruptions and escalating behaviors have become a major nationwide issue. Barnstead is not alone in this battle, but if this is a widespread growing issue, why have we reduced our staffing ratios so drastically? We've lowered our support at the exact moment the need started to rise, and the impact on the remaining staff and students is profound. It is difficult to explain to anyone who hasn't worked in education in recent decades just how physically and emotionally taxing this has become. So I want to paint a picture of what it feels like for teachers and staff working under these conditions. When a child's behavior suddenly escalates and someone is at risk of being hurt, the adult in the room must instantly shift into crisis mode, thinking quickly, strategically, and calmly to keep everyone safe. In those moments, their body enters into fight or flight mode. Their heart starts racing, adrenaline surges, and they are forced to make split-second decisions that can affect a child's safety. With the lack of staff in this building, many times the adult is alone. They may call over the walkie for assistance, but there is no guarantee that an administrator will be able to come, as they are often dealing with other crises happening in the building. And when the situation finally de-escalates, there is no time for debriefing. The teacher is expected to turn around and resume teaching as if nothing happened. Meanwhile, the children in the classroom are also shaken. They've just witnessed a traumatic incident, and they're experiencing their own version of fight or flight. The adult must then put their emotions aside instead of processing their own stress response. They must immediately focus on calming the children's emotions, managing their anxiety, and responding to the chain reaction of behaviors in the classroom triggered by the event. This cycle can repeat multiple times a day, leaving both staff and students in a heightened state of anxiety. The lack of paras in the building also creates another serious safety concern. When a child becomes dysregulated, they may flee the classroom and at times make their way toward an exterior door. Not only could a child make it to Maple Street, or even worse, Route 28, but the building is also surrounded by active construction. With such limited staffing, there simply aren't enough adults available to monitor and secure exits. Not every child has a one-to-one para, yet some are still flight risks, often leaving classrooms and in some cases, the building itself. When a teacher is alone with 20 students and one runs, what are they supposed to do? And how can they respond effectively when administrators are already tied up managing other behavioral emergencies elsewhere in the building? I also want to be clear that students attempting to leave classrooms is not an issue unique to Barnstead. It happens in many schools. The concern escalates when it becomes frequent enough that it starts to feel normal. Children notice what their peers do, and when they see that leaving the classroom is possible, it can quickly lead to a chain reaction as other students follow the same behavior. We may not be able to prevent every situation, but we can and must put better safety measures in place, because no one wants to be on the other side of tragedy being asked, "What did you do to prevent this?" and realizing the answer is, not enough. To move this school out of crisis, you need to triage what matters most. District funding must be directed toward safety, not aesthetic features like the decorative sign out front. Those funds could have been allocated for blinking speed limit signs or additional police support. At this point, every dollar must support student and staff safety. And when it comes to staffing, this cannot continue to be ignored. You need to look closely at how you recruit, support, and retain the adults.
So there is a 3-minute limit. We're approaching 5 at this point.
Okay. I just have a minute left. All right, without enough adults in these hallways and classrooms, you will see more safety issues, more staff burnout and turnover, and you will continue to operate a school under crisis. We cannot keep hoping things will get better on their own. Safety is not something we address after tragedy strikes. It's something you safeguard now, before a child or staff member is seriously hurt. Because the last thing any of us wants is a preventable crisis turn into a headline.
Any other public input?
I just wanted to say something.
Sure.
I was very impressed by the 4 people, the intervention team. I think that is a much-needed thing that we need. My name, am I supposed to say my name? Because I don't
Yes.
think I did. I'm Lori Marr. I live in town. I work with a lot of the families within 68 Hours of Hunger. I've been a volunteer in the school many years ago, and I like to try to help families when I can. And I talk to the families a lot, and I hear a lot of things about the school. I hear about behavioral issues, bus issues, quality of education issues, and it concerns me because I care about our families and I care about what happens in the quality of education with our families. It's important that we take care of them. We spend a lot of money on the school, and we vote everybody in on this board, and we hope that they do the best job that they can do for our families, because that's really what's important, is making sure our kids get a really good education and that there's great communication between the school and the families, and making sure that the families are heard and the staffing is heard and that we have good quality education for our kids. So there are a lot of families that want to move out of this town, that pull their kids out of this school because of behavioral issues, because of the lack of quality of education, and the feeling that this board doesn't care about them. And so I just wanted to share what I think is going on, and I was happy to see that this intervention team is working on things, but I'd also like to just say that I would like to see this board work more with communicating with our families and trying to take care of getting us some good quality staff and increase our education for our kids so they can go on and live better lives. So that's all I wanted to say.
Any other public input? Seeing none, I'll close public input. We don't need a non-public. So future agenda and follow-up items. We've got building updates, athletics, and activities. So
Start budget development in the next
yes.
couple of weeks.
No. For the activities, it sounds like maybe some more information on it, like band or drama too, Howie, if there's anything like that. Anything else?
He mentioned a warrant article at last night's meeting. I don't know if that needs to be brought up here. No.
There's a different time frame for Alta.
Okay, thanks.
During the meeting, I happened to look it up, so I can just tell if anyone wants to put it on your calendars. The 4th through 8th grade band and chorus concert is at 6:30 p.m. on the 8th of December, so that's before you have another meeting. It is on the website calendars, but I'm not sure which ones we have. We have 3. So the 8th at 6:30, that's the grades 4 through 8 Barnstead Band and Chorus concert, and then the Prospect Band and Chorus holiday concert is at 6:30 on the 17th.
Thank you.
I think you might be there that night. Not sure.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Or no, we'll be here on the 17th. Anything else? No. All right. Our next meeting is December 17th, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.